Ladies and gentlemen, growth is not a mystery, it's a pattern. And the truth is, some people simply move through that pattern faster than others. It's not because they're luckier, smarter, or born with some secret gift. It's because they make choices the rest of us often avoid. They embrace discomfort, they act before they feel ready, and they treat failure as a stepping stone instead of a stop sign. Today, I want to strip away the illusions and tell you exactly why others grow faster than you, and what you can do starting now to close that gap. When you look at the people who seem to grow faster, achieve more, and move ahead of the curve, it's tempting to think they've been blessed with some secret advantage, better opportunities, more connections, or a higher natural ability. But if you look closely, you'll often find something far less glamorous and far more uncomfortable. They are willing to give up what you won't. They sacrifice comfort for growth. And that's a truth most people don't want to hear because it confronts us with our own unwillingness to suffer for the sake of progress. Comfort is intoxicating. It tells you you're safe, you're fine, you can stay where you are. But the same comfort that soothes you also quietly robs you of momentum. Growth is, by its nature, an uncomfortable process. It means stretching beyond your current limits, and that stretch always hurts. Think of muscles in a gym. You don't grow them by keeping the weight light enough to never strain. You grow them by putting them under stress enough to tear the fibers so they rebuild stronger. Life works the same way. The discomfort you avoid is the very thing that would have made you stronger, wiser, and more capable. The people who advance rapidly don't have a special love for discomfort. It's not that they enjoy sleepless nights, difficult conversations, or public failure. It's that they've learned to value the results on the other side more than the comfort of avoiding them. They've trained themselves to endure what most people instinctively run from. They say yes to the awkward networking event, the terrifying public speech, the challenging project that might expose their weaknesses. They're not fearless, they simply put purpose ahead of fear. And here's the paradox: the more you try to protect your comfort, the more fragile you become. When you never push yourself beyond your current limits, those limits don't stay the same, they shrink. Your tolerance for stress decreases, your ability to adapt weakens, and even small challenges start to feel overwhelming. The world moves forward while you stay where it's warm and safe, and then one day you wonder why others seem so much further ahead. This is why sacrificing comfort isn't just an option. It's a necessity if you want to grow at all, let alone grow fast. Every time you choose the harder path, you're not just building skills, you're building the psychological toughness to take on even bigger challenges next time. It compounds. The discomfort you willingly face today becomes the resilience you rely on tomorrow. Philosophically, this is tied to one of life's most fundamental trade-offs, the relationship between order and chaos. Comfort is order, it's predictable, it's controlled, but growth comes from chaos, the unknown, the unpredictable, the risky. Too much chaos will overwhelm you, but too much order will suffocate you. The people who grow the fastest are the ones who willingly, deliberately step into chaos in measured doses. They live in that tension between stability and challenge because they know that's where life expands. And this is where most people stumble. They think they can have it both ways. They want to grow, but they also want to feel safe all the time. They want new opportunities, but they don't want to risk losing what they have. They want strength, but they avoid the weight. And because of that, they stay in the same loop, comfortable but stagnant. You can't be surprised when someone passes you in life if they're simply willing to endure more discomfort than you are. If they're ready to work when they'd rather rest, speak when they'd rather stay silent, take risks when they'd rather hold back, of course they'll grow faster. They're paying a price you're not. And the hard truth is, the price is always paid upfront. You don't get to grow first and feel discomfort later. You must feel it now, when it's hardest, so that later, when everyone else is breaking under the weight, you're the one who can carry it. So the question isn't whether you can grow, it's whether you're willing to feel the stretch, to deliberately step into situations that make you anxious, tired, or uncertain, to stop waiting for the perfect time when growth will somehow feel pleasant. It never will. If you can stop wishing for comfort and start pursuing capacity, you'll find that the discomfort you once feared becomes the fuel that drives you. In the end, it's simple. Comfort is the slow death of potential. The faster you give it up, the faster you'll grow. One of the great misconceptions that quietly sabotages people's growth is the belief that they have to feel ready before they can begin. It sounds reasonable on the surface, prepare thoroughly, make sure everything's in place, eliminate every risk, and then, when the stars align, you take your shot. But if you look at those who grow the fastest, you'll find they operate by a different rule. They start before they feel ready. They move while others are still thinking, still planning, still waiting for certainty. And that difference in timing, repeated over months and years, creates a gap that becomes almost impossible to close. Feeling ready is an illusion. It's a psychological trick your mind plays to delay risk. No matter how much you plan, no matter how much you rehearse, you will never remove the uncertainty. Life is dynamic. The conditions you are trying to control are always shifting. By the time you've convinced yourself you're ready, the opportunity you were waiting for may have passed. The ones who grow quickly understand this. They've learned that readiness is not a prerequisite for action. It's the result of action. You become ready by doing, not by waiting. Think about how we learn anything. You didn't master speaking your first language by waiting until you knew every word. You stumbled through, made countless mistakes, and learned in real time. The same principle applies to any pursuit. The people who act before they feel ready are essentially giving themselves permission to learn in motion. They let the process itself become their teacher, rather than standing on the sidelines studying the game forever. This approach requires humility. You have to be willing to look inexperienced, to make errors in public, to take criticism, and that's exactly why most people avoid it. They confuse the discomfort of not knowing everything with the danger of truly failing. But the reality is inaction is the far greater danger. Inaction locks you in place while the world moves forward without you. Psychologically, there's another layer here: perfectionism. Perfectionism disguises itself as high standards, but underneath, it's often just fear of exposure. It's the fear that if you try before you're ready, people will see you at less than your best. But perfectionism kills momentum. It keeps you polishing the same thing endlessly while others are producing, adapting, and improving with each iteration. That's why someone with less talent but more action will often surpass someone with more talent but endless hesitation. Philosophically, this ties into the nature of growth itself. Growth is chaotic. It emerges from trial, error, adjustment, and persistence. If you wait for clarity before acting, you're trying to eliminate the very chaos that makes growth possible. The people who move before they feel ready embrace that chaos. They don't need to see the whole staircase before taking the first step. They trust themselves to figure out the next one when they get there. You can see this principle in entrepreneurship, art, relationships, fitness, any domain you care to name. The entrepreneur who launches a product before it's perfect gains real-world feedback and improves it based on actual users, while the one still perfecting it in private gains nothing but theoretical improvements. The writer who publishes their imperfect first draft gets responses, builds an audience, and owns their craft, while the one endlessly rewriting page one remains invisible. The person who starts working out before they've found the perfect routine gets stronger week by week, while the one researching the best plan never leaves the couch. And here's the critical point: momentum is built through movement, not thought. The earlier you act, the faster that momentum compounds. Each step you take, even if it's awkward or imperfect, creates a foundation for the next. You learn faster, adapt faster, and improve faster. That's why over time, the person who starts before they're ready seems to grow at a speed that others can't match. They're simply stacking more cycles of action and feedback while others are still stuck in planning mode. So the next time you find yourself thinking, "I'll start when I'm ready," remind yourself that readiness will never come in the way you expect it to. It's not a feeling, it's a capability you build along the way. You don't wait for it, you create it. And the price of waiting is measured not in days or weeks, but in lost opportunities, lost experiences, and one of the most striking differences between people who seem to grow quickly and those who don't is how they respond to failure. For most, failure is a signal to slow down, to retreat, to question whether they were meant to pursue something in the first place. But for those who advance at a remarkable pace, failure is something entirely different. It's information. It's not an identity, not a scarlet letter, not a life sentence. It's data. And that shift in interpretation makes all the difference in how fast they progress. When you treat failure as data, you separate the event from your sense of self. You stop thinking, "I am a failure," and start thinking, "This didn't work." That's a radically different psychological position. One buries you in shame. The other opens the door to problem solving. The first locks you into inaction. The second compels you to move forward with adjustments. People who grow fast aren't magically immune to disappointment. They simply refuse to let a single outcome define them. Part of this comes from understanding that failure is unavoidable if you're doing anything worthwhile. The only way to guarantee that you'll never fail is to never try. But that safety comes at the expense of any real growth. Life is full of complex systems, markets, relationships, skills, health, and no matter how much you prepare, you can't predict every variable. The only way to find out what works is to test it, and testing inevitably means you'll discover what doesn't. Fast growers simply run more tests than everyone else. There's also an important philosophical dimension here. We often think of failure as an endpoint, when in reality it's just part of the iteration process. In engineering, every failed design is simply a prototype on the way to a working solution. In science, every disproved hypothesis is progress because it narrows the field of possibilities. In life, each failed attempt, if interpreted correctly, removes a path that won't lead you where you want to go. The problem isn't failure itself, it's the meaning we attach to it. And this is where many people slow themselves down. They take failure personally. Instead of seeing it as evidence about the method, they see it as evidence about themselves. They start questioning their worth, their intelligence, their potential. That mental spiral takes time to recover from, time the fast growers aren't wasting. Because while the first group is licking their wounds and doubting their future, the second group is already making adjustments and taking their next shot. It's not that the fast growers don't feel the sting, they do. They're human, but they've trained themselves to move from emotional reaction to analytical reflection as quickly as possible. They might give themselves a moment to be frustrated, but then they ask the crucial question, what is this trying to teach me? That question turns failure from a dead end into a doorway. Psychologically, this is tied to resilience, the ability to recover quickly from difficulty. Resilience isn't about avoiding pain, it's about metabolizing it into strength. Every time you face a setback and turn it into insight, you're building that resilience. Over time, setbacks that would have stopped you in your tracks become just another part of the process. And when you can move through failure that quickly, your rate of growth accelerates dramatically. This mindset also keeps you in the game longer. Many people quit not because they lack ability, but because they can't handle the emotional weight of repeated failure. They don't realize that the weight gets lighter the more you carry it. Those who persist, who keep showing up even after embarrassing losses or public mistakes, eventually find themselves ahead, not because they avoided failure, but because they outlasted it. If you want to grow as quickly as the people you admire, you have to reframe failure entirely. You have to strip it of its emotional sting and see it for what it is, see feedback from reality. It's reality saying, not this way, try something else. And if you respond to that feedback immediately, without letting pride or fear slow you down, you'll be amazed at how quickly you can adjust your trajectory.